You're listening to Podcast PXN,
a video game podcast
delivering player experience news.
Let's go!
Somebody play taps because Xbox might be dead, or at least their reputation. I'm kidding. I'm being hyperbolic, but we do have quite the monumental episode. Indeed, I'd argue one of the biggest episodes on the podcast to date. Arguably, even bigger than when the Xbox Activision news broke when they were first being acquired. This is maybe a step above that. Folks, welcome to Podcast PXN, episode 242, 8 episodes away from 250. Fellas, we're getting close. I am one of your hosts, video essayist and video producer at Dual Shockers, Christian Macias, joined over Discord by Kentucky's #1 Spartan, PXN founder, Daniel Prindle.
Jump in?
Jump
In?
in?
Jump into our next co-host, the president of the Tifa Lockhart fan club. He's a Nintendo aficionado and artist extraordinaire at Roro.
Hello, hello.
And I've decided the man with the new intro, the third person Sigma, Gage Dempster.
Third person. I like it. I like it a lot, and I'm ready to represent the Sigmas.
Represent who? The third person Sigmas?
Yeah, exactly. All the Sigmas out there.
Fantastic. Folks, thank you to everyone watching us live and participating in the chat. Just as a reminder, we're live each and every single Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. You can search Podcast PXN there. Simultaneously as well over on twitch.tv/Podcast PXN, but we don't like Twitch. I'm kidding. I have no idea. I just threw that there. Twitch, I'm sorry. Well, am I sorry? Housekeeping. Big episode today. Stay tuned. Topic of the show this week is... Tab over to the correct Google Doc here. We have to talk about Xbox. We have to talk about the games industry. First, the show always starts with the quick bites. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Psych, there are no quick bites today. Today's show is so massive, we just have the one news. It's literally just topic of the show. What's that? Oops, a bump in the road. We just ran over a little street meet that, you know what Gage said earlier over on Twitter, our private DMs. He said, let's just at least mention this. And you know what? He walked it back, but I'm saying, no, we're walking it back again. Let's cover this. It seems like artwork might be stored internally on the Grand Theft Auto 6 website, I believe. There's either screenshots of the game or cover art or a mix mash, but it seems like somewhere in the code there's like some hidden artwork indicative that we might be seeing more from GTA 6 very soon.
Yes, I think if you look at the... I saw a post kind of breaking down the history of Rockstar and what they like to do, and both Red Dead and GTA 5 got their second trailers just days before their investors call for that quarter. And we have a Take-Two investors call coming up on May 16th, I think, May 15th or May 16th. So I think it's very possible that we might get that second trailer maybe by this time next week, which is kind of exciting.
Take-Two will have great news. They'll announce a new trailer for Grand Theft Auto 6, and then right after they'll say, here comes some more layoffs.
Unfortunately, it's exactly... No, but maybe you're not. That's the unfortunate part.
Sadly, yeah.
We shall see. And that's it for our street meets. It's time for PXN News of the Week. Psych! Oh. That's actually their news of the week is just tots. Like we're literally just doing tots today. But we are going to stop at two quick little check-ins here before we get into news of the week. Of course, we always have to do our fantasy draft check-in. Yeah, let me log in to see if there's been any updates here
from you. I think.
Oh yeah, what did I get? What did I do? The fuck am I doing? How do you know this?
Because I already logged in. I already saw it.
Well, okay. Let's see the league history. There's a one pickup successfully. Haha, hell yeah. From Eternal Rose Software. That's me. May 4th. May the 4th be with us or with me. I picked up Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. It's a game coming out next week. I've been really excited about it. I think it's going to do well. I should have picked up Crow Country too.
I've been hearing stuff about that one. That's the Resident Evil PS1 sort of looking one.
PS1 survival horror, yep. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
You also have another game I think may be coming out, but I haven't heard a whole lot about it.
Hades 2?
No. Hellblade 2.
Oh, shit. That is my game, isn't it?
Yeah.
You
And
don't
more
have
on that-
Hades 2. I've got Hades 2.
Yeah, that didn't come in 2024, though. They
You're right.
all
Yeah.
but confirmed. More on that in topic of the show. But until then, folks, what you got for me? Daniel, what you been up to lately?
Yes, I've been supporting the greedy corporate overlords by playing Halo Infinite. I apologize in advance for that. But more importantly, played some walkabout mini golf with the lads, and that was a fun time. Went back to the golf greens, got some new levels in. We got a lot more to explore, boys.
Yes, and you also got Spanx. Don't forget to mention that as well.
Wow, that's weird because I'm pretty sure I beat you by quite a bit in the first match we played. So
How
that's
many hole-in-ones
interesting.
did you get when we played that
Yeah,
session? I was
that's
just curious.
That's funny you ask. You got the only hole-in-one. However, I absolutely destroyed you. So, I mean,
I don't know.
which one
the person who gets
works?
a hole-in-one is probably a pretty good golfer.
Oh, I don't know about that. A pretty lucky one, that is.
I gotta say, I came, I saw, I conquered because I jumped in for one game, spanked Daniel, bro got last, I think, and then I left. All I gotta say about that.
There was no spanking. It was close.
Did you win?
It was down to the wire.
All you had to do was do one putt, and you would have sealed the deal.
Yeah, I
What
fucked
happened?
up the final putt. You're right. I fucked it up. The pressure got to me. I'm not Tiger Woods. Yeah. All right. I guess I am Tiger Woods in modern day because he's not very good anymore.
Hope he's not listening to Jesus.
Ro, what about you?
Nothing. No games this week, sadly. Yeah, I didn't really get up to much consuming of media this week at all. So yeah.
Because you're busy
Got it.
creating media.
Oh, I hope so. I wish
Hell
I
yeah.
too. Oh, God.
I've been playing for some stuff for work, some stuff I can't quite talk about. Some stuff actually I want to mention after the podcast. I forgot to mention it beforehand. But then I also got to sit down and play through Indica, this little indie. I wouldn't even know what you want to call it. It's just a third-person adventure game. It's about this nun in alternate history, pre-revolution Russia. Very much
Which
on the
one?
brand of hell. Huh?
Which one?
Which revolution?
Yeah.
Oh, good point. Let's see. What year is it? I don't know.
Multiple options, multiple
Okay.
choice.
I actually don't know. I actually don't know which revolution because it's alternate history. So I actually don't know.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. I was just trying to get a grasp of what century it was.
But she goes on this adventure, and this is in the marketing with a partner you would not expect. She can hear the devil. The devil speaks to her, and so you're like going on this mission, and like you're pretty much just like going back and forth with the devil. But like, what do religious morals even mean? As this like nun is like going back and forth. It turns into like kind of a really surrealist game. People online are calling it like the A24 video games. I disagree. That doesn't mean anything. A24 is just a distributor. They distribute all kinds of movies. But at the same time, I get what they mean. This game is certainly weird in that regard. And it's like doing stuff that games don't really do. I sent you a clip last night that I wanted you guys to see. It's like 5 seconds long. It is certainly
It's fun.
it's a little wacky. It's cool. It's cool. Not all of it came together. I think the narrative is interesting, but like the game itself was like just uninspired a little bit. The gameplay just, doesn't quite live up to like what the narrative is doing, and that's unfortunate. But still, I still checked it out. It wasn't, it was an indie. Wasn't expensive. It was like 3.5 hours, so I enjoyed my time. That's it for me. Oh. And then 2.5 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago,
Right.
three of us
Oh.
sat down and we played through Halo, not Reach, ODST,
Halo 3.
something's
ODST.
Halo 3, Ordnance, Dropship Troopers.
No.
What? Okay, Shock
You know-
Troopers.
Orbital Drop Shock Troopers.
What did I say? I
Not-
said the same thing.
not even
yeah.
I said
close to
Starship
that.
Troopers.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, I got it. The Helldivers ripoff.
Oh my god.
It's been so long. My thoughts are already murky on this. But Daniel, I'll say this: Halo 2 still remains the best Halo game
Oh, well, that's
of
fine.
all the ones I've played. When we were playing through that game, you made a comment and you were like, "This game was only made in a year." Can you believe that? And I see that as both a pro and a con, because I felt like some of the game's design was like you could tell when maybe like they were strapped for time. However, what they were able to make with the time they were given is maybe my favorite of like the three Halo games in terms of like the missions themselves. Was pretty fun. Granted, it was pretty fun to hop in with you two specifically, but the one thing I kept coming back to is Halo's music still is fantastic. There's a lot of like 2 and 3 that really resonated with me that I liked, even playing in the 2020s. ODST no different. Awesome renditions with like the saxophone that Dan called a piano or whatever, or guitar or whatever. But that saxophone does hit hard. There's a cool tone. I like when it's like rainy. Even if like the swing didn't come together fully for me, I do appreciate the swing of like having a narrative that revolves around like piecing together what happened to your squad. I found it pretty interesting. All in all, pretty good time. I enjoyed it. So ODST. I think I like it more than Halo 3. I don't know.
Get the fuck out of here with that shit. Oh, sorry.
It's the vibes, right? It's the unique vibes in the atmosphere.
I think it's the vibes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't forget to scan.
Don't forget to scan.
You know the
Figure it out.
music.
Yeah.
Time to
Mhm,
dance.
mhm.
Now you know that reference, right? Nathan Fillion.
He now
Oh,
knows
is he in
it.
that? Yeah. Is he in that game?
Jesus Christ. It's Buck.
Gage, talk to me. Oh, hey, Buck is also Buck's a character in that game.
Yeah, Nathan Fillion.
Gage, talk to me.
What have I been playing? I've been playing walkabout mini golf, slapping Dan in mini golf.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty much every
That's-
hole that we play.
Yep.
Which was really fun to do.
Not sure.
And then Halo Infinite, I've actually been playing a little bit more of. I have not been playing it as much as Dan has, but Dan got me into this really cool. Love Forge in Halo, one of the coolest things they ever did. And we were playing this Nazi zombies game mode that somebody made, where it's way better than any right it has to, like any right that it has. Like it's you're doing your mystery box, your perks, your power ups, and like you can pack a punch your weapons. It's very, very cool stuff. Apparently they're working on adding that to matchmaking, so that'll be kind of cool once that finally drops. And then more importantly, I immediately picked up Hades 2 when that dropped. And I'm about 5 or 6 hours in. And it's interesting. I don't know if phenomenon is quite the right word to describe it, but there's this thing that happens where when somebody makes something that's just like the best of its genre, once they do a follow-up, even if it's just the same, like just as good quality-wise, it just doesn't it's interesting. It's almost like it's less exciting, even though I'm playing this game and I'm like, wow, this is really just as groundbreaking and thoughtful as the first game was. I love the systems in it. They've changed some things. The gameplay design is still extremely inspired, but because they already like climbed the mountain the first time, it's almost like I'm not enjoying it as much as Hades 1, but it's not because it's any less good, if that makes sense.
Doesn't have the
Kind
same magic as the first go, I guess.
Right, the first Hades is like the best roguelite you can play ever. Like that's just kind of how it is. And then so far with my time in Hades 2, I'm like, wow, they did it again, but it's just less exciting because you're now just doing it for the second time. But that sounds like a negative, but this game is like quite literally so far in my time playing with it just as good. One thing I want to point out is that the main character is like immediately charming, like just as charming as Zagreus was, who is a great character and I love a lot. And so that was the one thing that was really impressive, is that they were able to do it again, like almost within the first couple of cutscenes. I'm like, wow, okay, this character's just as well written. So Hades 2, shout out, early access right now. It's fantastic. Having a great time with it.
I also bought it because I wanted to. I wanted to support Supergiant. I figured this is
Right.
the best way to do it, just to buy it. But I'm waiting until after Summer Game Fest to even dip my toes in it, because I just have so much shit to do in May.
Yeah.
But I'm excited. But I get what you mean, because like I had a similar conversation with someone else who was like, "This is fantastic. Maybe even one of my favorite games of the year." But it's also like roguelikes are kind of a trend currently in gaming. Like there's like a lot of them, you
Right.
know. So you get a little bit tired of them because you're saturated. And even if it is like the follow up to, you know, one of the best games ever made, and it might be even better, you're still kind of rogueliked out in a way.
Right.
That it's like, okay, well, even though this is surpassing your expectations, you're still kind of like, okay, well, you know, I get what you mean.
Right.
Don't lie though, you forgot one.
I did forget one, and I
Played up.
Played Up, of
Oh.
course. Of course. Played Up has become, I think this is the best compliment I can give this game. And I don't know if you guys want to jump in, but Played Up has kind of become a regular rotation for us. Right? Like we're getting into a cadence where we're usually squatting up like every weekend. We usually one night every weekend, the three of us will get together and play something. And it's just dawned on me now that for like the past 4 to 5 weekends, Played Up comes up at some point throughout the night. Nobody objects to it. It's just now in our regular rotation of games, as if we were booting up another first-person shooter. Played Up is one of those indie success stories that I absolutely love. I had not heard about this game at all until it was on Game Pass. So I mean, not to jump ahead to the conversation we're gonna have, but
Sure.
shout out to Game Pass for that. Played Up, man, what an incredible game. I need to look up the guy that made this, the solo dev that made it, because he is man, what a game.
This is a good time to bring up, actually, and maybe we'll continue this conversation in private, but we had such a good Played Up session last time we played that in the middle of playing it, I had a thought. What if this year for PXN, did I even say this during an episode?
Yes, do it. Say it.
What if this year for PXN we just expanded Game of the Year discussion into like beyond, like any game beyond 2024 is eligible, you know?
Or any game that we've played in the year 2024.
That's
I see what you're
right.
saying.
There you go.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Is Played Up in your it's in your contenders?
I'm just saying, like,
Okay.
you know, it could be for PXN. You know what I'm saying?
When did Played Up come out?
2022, 21.
I think yep. No,
Are
I
you
think you're right.
serious? Holy shit.
Yeah.
Played
That's
Up. Let's see.
crazy. I didn't even realize that.
Maybe 2023, but I think
August
2022.
4th, 2022.
Wow.
Yeah.
Think about it.
That's an interesting diet. That's an interesting idea. Maybe we should discuss that more off air. But I've had similar ideas too, where I've thought about
Or-
like rebranding it as like the game we played of the year. I don't know, something like that. Yeah.
Or you could also have, you know, game of 2024 and then game of the year. I don't know. I don't
Right,
know how you would
right.
phrase it, but
We'll deliberate. We'll deliberate.
you know what? Let's just make super confusing categories with super confusing descriptions that no one knows what
Not very
game goes
different
in
from
what.
the actual Game Awards. Wow.
Yeah.
And the next award goes to the best game that Daniel lost the most games in. Oh, Walkabout Mini Golf. Come to the stage.
Wow.
Got his
Shots
ass.
fired.
All right. All right, it's time to get real. I'm going beast mode for this. I'm gonna go put my professional hat on. Professional podcast. I'm gonna enunciate all my words and everything.
Let's do it.
Okay. It's been a really hard week for a lot of people, a lot of developers, specifically gamers, people who want the best out of their consoles and ecosystems that they want to see thrive in the games industry. Been a great week for executives who are wanting to have lines on spreadsheets go up and for stocks in their shares continue to increase exponentially, I suppose, forever. I don't know. This all started with actually on the Sony front, executive mandates from there pissing off a lot of people. Might have been late last week. Sony finally forced a little rule that they had when Helldivers first came out. PSN was required when you were signing on to play Helldivers. The reason they disabled that was because they did not expect the level of success, so they disabled that feature so that more players could log in to play Helldivers. Well, now that servers have, months later been kind of qualmed and they're kind of stable now, Sony's like, okay, it's time to officially turn this feature back on. The problem is that they sold this game in over 100 countries that does not have PSN. So if you're a PC player on Steam and you bought this, suddenly you might not have access to the game. So what PC players do is they strike against Sony by review bombing Helldivers 2 on Steam. It goes from mostly positive to mixed and then eventually down to mostly negative. The PC players stood up for what they believed in. I'm going to continue here. The Helldivers 2 community manager encouraged the same day players to continue review bombing the game to use as leverage against Sony, because this would give them more ammunition to point towards, like, this is not what's best for our community. Unfortunately, that mod was eventually fired from his position, which sucks. I think there's a current online petition to get him re-enlisted because people really enjoyed this community manager.
Yep.
But the next day, Sony ended up reversing the policy entirely. They put out a statement being like, we hear you, and we're still learning on what's best for PC players. And I think I saw a mention of this, like, this feature possibly going away for another subsequent release, but I'm not sure. And also, like, companies lie, so we'll see. And reviews are now steadily being reversed on Steam. About 2/3 of them have now been switched back to positive. So Helldivers 2 coming back. And then I want to throw this in there as well. I forgot to link this. Helldivers 2 added a cape to commemorate the incident. If you haven't seen it, the cape is just like a screen grab of, like, the Steam reviews over time. It's like down and all of a sudden it comes back up. I'll link you guys to that.
It's kind of silly.
Thoughts on this kind of mandate?
I could go first because I think initially my reaction was, and I think I put it in our chat, that I was like, I think people are being a little bit, over the top with this. However, I know you're shaking your head, Gage, but I did caveat it.
I'm waiting.
I did caveat it with saying I'm not sure how this affects the whole purchasing thing, because that was before we knew the extent of that and what their solution would be for that, which apparently we in turn found out they didn't have a solution. They were just going to be like, I don't know, you're out of luck. So I will walk back my statement about that I had initially in terms of people freaking out too much, because quite obviously, that made a huge impact on Sony's decision to reverse the decision, and that was the right decision, of course. So yeah, great stuff from the community on this one. The only thing that I will say, though, I don't personally agree with going back to the studio's previous games and review bombing them, because I don't see how that helps. Like, people were review bombing the original Helldivers, which is completely unrelated in my opinion. So that I don't really agree with, but obviously you can't stop, crazy trolls on the internet. So there you go.
Right. I agree with that too. I don't want to sound dismissive. That is very lame of somebody to do, and you're absolutely right. Like, it just isn't completely different, does not affect it. I don't know that was the majority of people. I feel like that was probably just again, people that are just angry and And that's the thing, like whenever something like this happens and there is a good cause to kind of quote unquote fight for, which is just, leaving an angry review, but we'll just use the term because that's what people were doing to fight for. There's always people that are going to jump into that mob just looking to fight, and they don't really care what they're fighting for. They just want to get angry. And this happens all the time with a whole bunch of different things. So to me, that's kind of what going back to the original Helldivers was. It's like, okay, these are people that just want to that are just waiting for an excuse to leave a shitty fucking comment somewhere. So yeah, very lame of people to do that. But I don't think we should spend too much time on it because I really don't think that was the majority of people. I think most people were upset with the business practice that Sony is trying to push on it. And you know what? To your original point, Dan, of like, this seems like it might be an overreaction. Like, I think maybe people are pushing back just against the tide as opposed to the specific thing where it's just like this kind of just, I don't know what you'd call it, but this kind of corporate overreach where everything is kind of got to be, you got to sign up for this, you got to sign up for that, you got to do this. So yeah, I don't know. I respect the Helldivers community a lot. I respect that moderator, that community manager, a lot for saying the quiet part out loud, which is absolutely why he got fired, because you definitely shouldn't say that. Like, shouldn't in terms of like, Sony is your overlord and Sony doesn't want to hear you say that, but you should say it because that's the right thing to say and it was the truth. So shout out to that guy. I hope he gets his job back. I don't know. I sincerely doubt it, but I'm very proud of the Helldivers community. That was of people putting their foot downs, and wouldn't you know it, it worked. It inspired change. Also, yeah, we'll leave it there. Somebody else can jump in.
Yeah, I was watching I think I was watching Kind of Funny today as well, where there was a dev on that, the dev of the Zao game. I forget the full title, but he was of the opinion that the review bombing didn't do anything. It was the refunds that made Sony change their mind, which I partially agree with that. But like, that is not always an option to like get the refunds and stuff like that. And I don't know. I'm of two minds of it, but he was definitely of the mind like, don't review bomb. And as a developer, I could see why he would say something like that and hurt them with your wallet and stuff. He actually didn't even say that. He was like, just there are better options out there without giving those other options. So it was weird, but I understood where he was coming from. So I agree that the refunds probably helped, but I also disagree that review bombing didn't also have a part to play in the reverse of that, because I don't know, Sony usually isn't. I could be wrong. Is Sony usually good about the refund things? I think it was like the Steam that.
It was Steam, yeah. So Steam. people, as far as I know, people on PlayStation weren't refunding because that doesn't affect them at all. It was just the Steam platform, right? So yeah. And Steam normally has a very strict mandate of you need to have bought the thing within the last 14 days, and also you can't have played it for more than 2 hours. That's if you meet those two criteria, you can refund and you'll have 100% guaranteed success. But the problem lies in a game that's been out for 6 months. People, all those criteria go out the window. So the fact that Steam was accepting refunds was also kind of absolutely probably huge. Affected Sony a lot, yeah. Because I don't know how it all works. I've heard many different things, but I've heard that when a game like that happens, like they go to Sony and they're like, give us the money back or something like that. I don't know how it works, but that probably did affect Sony. Yeah. But the thing that you brought up, Rochelle, which is what I stopped myself from saying, was that, and it's not that it's a huge deal and that it's something that we need to make a huge a mountain out of, but there was a lot of toxic positivity on this, and I saw a lot of people saying, don't review bomb, don't refund, don't and it was kind of like you said, not really offering up any alternatives, but it was just kind of a lot of don't do anything. You can be mad, but just don't do anything. And that's, again, it sounds good. It sounds like you're being positive for the developers, but sometimes you need to take a stand, and the developers are the unintended casualty of that. And that obviously I would not. Arrowhead, I've been singing their praises since this game came out. I love Helldivers 2. We all do, actually, on this podcast, right? We've all played it. We all love it. But when something like this happens and the ball is out of their court, sometimes the only thing you can do is review bomb and to ask for a refund and to adversely affect the developers in the hope that the publisher above them takes notice. And I saw a lot of that. I saw a lot of people pretty much urging people to not do what they're doing, and I just feel like if we had done that, then nothing would have changed. So that's where I get a little bit nervous, and that's why I bring up toxic positivity every now and again, because it is a thing and it is toxic, even if it's sort of wrapped in this bubble of like, oh, we're doing it for the developers. It's like, yeah, but sometimes there's more nuance to the issue than that.
Because 2K, like 2K, people who make 2K are just as good people as the people who made Helldivers, but I feel like review bombing 2K because of the gambling and stuff that's in it. Like there have been review bomb campaigns in the past that are like encouraged, like yes, continue doing that. But for some reason here, because Helldivers is a good game and it deserves to be like well reviewed, I think people were a little bit more upset about it in general. But like,
for sure,
I think it's a great way to get your voice heard when refunding was an option this time, but it's not always the option. So I think it's a good way to do that.
Real quick before Christian jumps in, I just want to say I also disagree with the narrative that like all these people playing Helldivers 2 wanted to review bomb it. Like because people are doing it, like it's almost like as if sometimes with the whole toxic positivity thing is that people will attribute the worst possible sort of reasoning for things, where it's like I don't think the PC player base wanted to do any of this. I think they were content and loving the game. The game had insane review scores on Steam. So like when people are review bombing, I think it's like counterproductive to the argument to just say like, well, review bombing is toxic. It's like, well, I don't think that the player base necessarily wants to do that. I think they want their game to sort of, and I think it's also a good point that like, what would Sony have continued to do if the community just turned over and let this happen? Would Sony then also sort of keep pushing forward and add other things to the game? I don't know. Sorry, go ahead, Christian.
Yeah, you know what else is toxic? Removing the game from people who live in a country where where there isn't PSN. Of course, correct. if they can't play a game they bought from you, what makes you think they won't review a product they like don't have access to anymore? They can't play it.
And I would ask anyone that says review bombing is not an effective way or it's not the right thing. Like I would really ask them. I would want to sit down and ask somebody like, what future do you see if there's a future where you can you leave a review for when a game comes out and you're not allowed to edit it ever again? What kind of shit would developers and publishers get up to? I'm sorry, I don't. Review bombing is a necessary evil that we need sometimes. Now, people will review bomb stuff for stupid shit, like the Last of Us TV show. Exactly. I'm not going to pretend that doesn't exist, right? Where, it's two people of the same gender kissed and I got to leave a 0 out of 10. This episode sucks. That happens. Don't get me, but I feel like it's a necessary evil, right? We can't get rid of cars because some people decide to get in them drunk and drive off a bridge. Like, that sucks. I wish it didn't happen, but it's like, I don't know. Changing your review is such an important thing. And if anything, this whole debacle has proved that it can and will work.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Gage. I don't think that, review bombing just as a whole could be seen as, positive or negative one way or the other.
Yes, I agree with you.
Yeah, it's 100% context, obviously. You got to look at each situation and, judge from there.
Somehow we spent way more time on this than I anticipated, but this is where the real show begins. Finally, I don't know, half an hour later or so. It's been a difficult week for Xbox, and for Xbox fans, and for Xbox studios, and for developers at some of these studios. So let's review everything. I've added context. Daniel, I think you were like killing some ants or something. I missed that comment. I don't know what was happening. You had a little ant. Hold on, I should ask. Did you spray those bad boys down?
Yeah, I told Gage the whole story in the pre-show. It's a long story. I don't want to bore people, but
okay. Okay. So, in case you missed anything while you were doing that, I believe I have everything covered in the second section of our Google document. However, I've labeled this as the Xbox bombs of this week. There's yesterday's and there's today's. Let's cover obviously the most important one, the one that started it all, is the first bomb. Yesterday, I woke up in the morning 8:30 or so, open Twitter, and the very first thing I see is people like being like, "What the fuck?" And I see everyone quote tweeting the same thing from like I think it was Bloomberg, and the article was that Xbox is shutting down 4 Bethesda studios. They are shutting down Arcane Austin, whose most recent game was Redfall, but they also previously made Prey. They are also shutting down Tango Gameworks, which of course made Hi-Fi Rush. Alpha Dog Studios, which I'm not familiar with, and Roundhouse Games, which I'm less familiar with as well. I believe some people from Roundhouse Games are going to be absorbed into ZeniMax Online Studios. I don't know if it's the whole studio, which are the makers of Elder Scrolls Online. Here's a quote: "The changes are grounded in prioritizing high-impact titles and further investing in Bethesda's portfolio of blockbuster games and beloved worlds, which you have nurtured over many decades." This comes from Matt Booty, head of Xbox Game Studios, in an email to employees Tuesday. We're going to put a pin on Matt Booty. He's going to come into play for today's news as well. Of course, people very fairly, in my opinion, upset at what the future of Xbox. Pretty much going contradictory to all the messaging that we've been kind of discussing very hopefully about with Xbox for the past couple of years. One that Dan mentioned on Twitter in our private chat is that Xbox talked a big game about wanting to get a foothold in Japan, and that being kind of like a big market that they want to kind of step further in. And lo and behold, they have now closed down the one studio that they had from Japan. A studio that previously made a game last year that won them a BAFTA and was in Game of the Year conversations. I also want to throw in Arcane Austin. Despite Redfall's kind of failures after launch, we do have to remind ourselves that it was ZeniMax who pushed Arcane Austin towards it being a multiplayer game and pushed that game to release before it needed to be. And I'll just throw this in now, even though it's news from today. That studio was was in the middle of pitching single player experiences and getting back to their roots that they were lauded for, which was Prey, and they were not given the opportunity to do so. I'm gonna throw in one more thing before we start talking, and that's this message from Phil Spencer that, of course, everyone. I mean, I'm just throwing in tweets that have been making the rounds. Phil Spencer, in an interview, said, "One thing I won't do is push against creative aspirations of our teams. When a team like Rare wants to do Sea of Thieves, when a team like Obsidian wants to do Grounded, when Tango Gameworks wants to do Hi-Fi, when everyone thought they were probably going to do Evil Within 3, I want to give the teams the creative platform to go and push their ability to push their aspirations." And here we are, where those studios are just gone now. I'll stop there. I mean, if whoever wants to go first, just initial reactions when you saw the news.
Anger.
Anger is definitely my number one feeling as well. Sadness too, but I think anger, and I'm still pretty pissed about all the closures. But I mean, there aren't like favorites, I guess is a weird way to put it, but I'm super pissed about Tango being closed. And like you said, like it won a BAFTA, and apparently Phil was super excited about it, and other people at the studio as well. I think there was a quote that came out today. I think you might be talking about the article later, so I might not bring it up. But Matt Booty had a quote about Hi-Fi Rush in a town hall today, or well, about games, specific types of games that they want in their catalog. And the type of game that he describes Hi-Fi Rush to a T, and you're still closing down studios that make those types of games that you claim you want, but you're like, it doesn't make any sense. And do we have a Phil Spencer section in this?
Yes,
breakdown?
yeah,
Okay.
of course.
And I'll save my comments on him until then. I'll let somebody else go. But anger was definitely the first gut reaction to this one for sure.
Anyone?
Dan, please.
Obviously sadness and disappointment, anger, all of the above. I mean, I was very sad to see Tango, just like Rose said, especially shut down because I loved Evil Within 1, loved Evil Within 2. I know they weren't the biggest games in the world to, the wider audience, but I loved those
They
games.
had their audience, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the survival. Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic games. I never got into Ghostwire Tokyo, but who cares? It's one game. Hi-Fi Rush. Incredible game. Like, fuck, was that my game of the year last year? I don't even remember. We'll go watch that episode.
Yeah.
I think it was in your top 3 for sure.
It was.
Absolutely up there. Yeah.
Yeah, it might have been my game. Yeah, I think it was my game of the year because then you guys took it over from there, I think. But anyways, shoot, I forgot what I was saying. Oh, yes, Tango, I was super upset about. So seeing that happen, especially since Shinji Mikami just left there like a year ago, and now shutting them down, that's disappointing. And then
He left because he was comfortable leaving. He was
Right.
like, okay, you guys are good now.
in a good spot, yeah,
Have fun. I'm going to do my own shit now, and then
yeah.
and that's good.
And that's, like Christian said, a great Japanese studio, and they talked about wanting Japanese studios, so that's super disappointing in terms of diversity of your studios and the creative things that we're seeing from these studios. A Japanese studio is going to produce something completely different than a Western studio, which is great to have. But I was also very disappointed with Arcane Austin because I loved Prey. For people that don't know, I was super fucking upset about Dan Stapleton's Prey review at launch. I'll continue to die on that hill. But anyways, I loved that game, and they basically, like you were saying, pigeonholed Arcane Austin into making a multiplayer game, which ended up being Redfall. Ended up being not such a great experience, but when you're being forced to make something that maybe you didn't really want to make, that's probably part of the issue. And Alpha Dog and Roundhouse, I don't want to offend people at those studios very much. I don't know really anything about them, so I don't have thoughts about it. Obviously it's terrible for the people that worked there to get laid off, but
I saw a tweet today, I think even just minutes before we went live, that was like, I don't think this news, that this is me paraphrasing the tweet, by the way. What makes this news worse was the inclusion of Tango Gameworks. Like, had it just been Roundhouse and who was the other one?
Alpha Dog.
Roundhouse, Alpha Dog, and Arcane Austin, it still would have been bad, but it would have been digestible. It would have been like, there's another one. But the inclusion of Tango, this is like we just talked about like Roller Drome last week in their studio. Like, that is also a BAFTA winning game. Like, even when the successes are closed, like, what kind of precedent does that set? And the thing for me that like really blows is I mean, even similar to like the Japanese front, but okay, well, I'll just say it like this. I was just talking to my friend about how much it sucks that like a lot of the AAA gaming front is really doubling down on like everything really being like these giant, massive blockbusters, and things kind of feeling the same. Do you know what I mean? Like, closing down Japan studio on Sony, for me, is still such a massive mistake. And then to see like, the Western developers Western studios double down with shit like this, I was like, it just like hurts to see a game that's so beloved from a team that's like so talented, so critically lauded, just go just like that. Because in my opinion, because of poor management, I understand that like these are executive decisions that are being put onto managers, but at the same time, it's also at the managerial level where like for the past decade or so, they've been the ones that have had like the money to spend on all these studios. And if suddenly like the response to like having all these studios is, well, now we don't have enough money to like continue operating costs, or like look at the spreadsheets and be like, oh, these games are going to take too long to make, so we have to make cuts somewhere, then it's on the managers then for spending that money in the first place.
Yep.
I'll keep moving. I'll keep. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
I mean, so this is the thing. Like, you say, it's an executive decision, and it's like, or no, yeah. If we're gonna talk about Phil later, then yeah, we can just.
Yeah, let me throw some stuff in here. I also forgot to mention this Aaron Greenberg tweet that people were quote tweeting, rightfully so. There were claims from I think Jeff Grubb that Hi-Fi Rush did not sell well, or whatever their metrics were. I don't know. And then Aaron Greenberg chimed in saying, Hi-Fi Rush was a breakout hit for us and our players in all key measurements and expectations, whatever those were. We couldn't be happier with what the team at Tango Gameworks delivered with his surprise release. That is also a tweet that Phil Spencer retweeted. Of course, we assume that Phil also would agree with that sentiment. And again, this is just like the contradictory message that I was trying to get us to talk about before. But there are two articles that I linked here, one from Kotaku and another that I really enjoyed from Sports Illustrated. But was it Sports Illustrated? I think it is. The video games division of Sports Illustrated? I don't know. Anyway, but I'm going to read you guys some quotes from both, if I may. And I highlighted them for myself. Okay. Here's some messaging from Kotaku. In October 2020, shortly after Xbox announced its plans to consume Bethesda, Spencer told Kotaku this deal was not done to take games away from another player base, and added that Xbox wants more people to be able to play games, not fewer people to be able to go play games. Yet in March 2023, Redfall director Harvey Smith said that Microsoft stepped in after buying Bethesda and canceled the PS5 port of the vampire hunting co-op game. Starfield shipped only on Xbox and PC, and despite a few Xbox games like Grounded and Sea of Thieves jumping to PlayStation and Switch from future big titles like Indiana Jones won't be multi-platform. Xbox's boss has also talked a big game about giving developers the freedom to make what they want to make, and this is the Aaron Greenberg stuff. So I won't waste your time there. But it ends with this. While Spencer may say wonderful things about creativity and letting his teams make what they want to make, the reality is that if those bets don't pay off, and even when they do, the teams are at risk of getting gutted or shut down, all while Microsoft becomes one of the few companies in history to be worth $3 trillion. I had to jump to the Sports Illustrated article for a second, and then I also screenshotted some stuff that I lost the article, but I want to give you guys some math just to get an idea of how much money we're talking about, because it's hard to really quantify billions and trillions of dollars. Arcane and Tango were not given a fair shake. Neither of them got to make an original game under the banner of Microsoft, with Microsoft's full financial backing. Microsoft spent $7.5 billion to acquire Bethesda and spent the next few years parading its library of IP, an acronym that makes me throw up in my mouth, around as key to the future of Xbox, showing them off. Dishonored, Prey, The Evil Within, and Hi-Fi Rush included, as more content for the content pipeline. And then it just goes on to talk about like money here, but I want to bring in these figures that I want to quantify before we start talking. Oh, great! It's from the same article. Here we go. In October 2023, Xbox's acquisition of ABK added more meat to the feeder, more titles it could claim as its own. Overwatch, Diablo, and even Call of Duty are now Xbox published games. And for the cool price of $68.7 billion, that's approximately enough to pay everyone at Arcane Austin an annual salary of $100,000 for the next 4,600 years. The cost of keeping these four studios alive is nothing to Microsoft. It has a value larger than the GDP of Canada, Russia, or Spain. And there's one more figure here that I had to screenshot. When he was booted from Activision, Bobby Kotick, a man who allegedly threatened to murder his former assistant, got a golden parachute of $350 million, enough to keep Arcane and Tango afloat for the next 2 decades.
It's one fucking guy.
This is where the money's going.
My God.
Is that true with the Bobby Kotick thing?
Well, to be fair, that was
his golden parachute was like $100 million. I didn't know it was $350 million.
And regardless, Bobby's golden parachute, that was contractually obligated. That wasn't like, here you go.
I don't give a fuck.
No, I get it. I get it. It's still awful. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it's not like they could have gotten out of that. It was either Bobby stays with Microsoft and running Activision, or you give him that
money that could be used somewhere else.
Well, right? I would love that, but they couldn't.
Yes,
right?
I see what Dan's saying in the semantics of this, right? If the goal is to buy Activision, this had to happen. You couldn't do it any other way. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Phil wasn't sitting down thinking like, okay, and you know what? And let's also give
Right.
100 million to Bobby Kotick because you know it was,
Right,
you had to do it right.
Also, fuck Bobby Kotick.
But your
Yeah.
first point with the you know with the
A drop in the
salaries-
well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, the two questions I have here when I link these articles were: does Xbox need a change in leadership, and are these shutdowns indicative of a failure of leadership, wherever they may be, at the executive level, but also the managerial level? And I'll pass the mic to you guys. I talked for a long time.
I'll jump in if I can. I'll come in with the spicy take, and then everybody else can have can dissect it and give a more nuanced take afterwards.
Get ready, everyone.
My answer at this point is yes. I think Xbox needs a management shakeup. This comes as somebody who, oh my god, what 3-4 years ago, I was probably saying the praises of Phil Spencer along with everyone else because man, what a sinking ship that you inherited, and man, what a great job you did to turn it around. I think Phil Spencer has done a lot of good for the brand. I think that it seems like to me, as somebody who has no idea about the inner workings of this, it seems to me that people maybe have gotten a little bit complacent and a little bit comfortable in their jobs. And I'm seeing a lot of, and it's like, this isn't coming from an emotional sort of like, man, I really hate what you did to me, Phil Spencer, so I'm gonna lash out. Like, I'm thinking of this logically and how jobs are supposed to work, in that if you do not hit the targets that are set out for you, I don't understand how you can keep pushing those repercussions onto the people below you. And like, I want to like Phil Spencer. Like, it's cool that out of all the CEOs in the gaming space, he does seem to be the one that actually knows the products and actually spends time in that ecosystem. Like, sure, he deserves credit for that, and all that is true. Like, he actually is not bullshitting. He is somebody who does know games, but that shouldn't shield you from poor performance, which is just like Xbox has been slipping for like a few years now. The pipeline of and it's not even like it's not even like Xbox is not performing up to my own standards. It's like Xbox isn't performing up to the standards that they keep setting for themselves with their releases every quarter, and we want to have we want Game Pass to hit this numbers, and we want to have this many studios pumping out this many products. Like, Xbox is fumbling, and I don't know that I think it's fair that the consequences of that continued fumbling, keeps getting shifted to everyone else. Phil Spencer is the CEO of Xbox. Like, he is the top guy of Xbox. And sure, I'm sure that some stuff comes down from the CEO of Microsoft, but this is your ship, and we know that he can do it. We know that he can steer the ship well because he did right a lot of wrongs, and he made a lot of actually really forward thinking and smart choices when he took over Xbox. But this can't be one of those things where all the good decisions Phil makes is Phil gets credit for, and then all the bad decisions Phil's not responsible for. You can't play this game. It has to be both, or neither, in which case the CEO role is completely irrelevant and what does it matter? So I don't know. We're in a tough spot. I like Phil. I want to like Phil, but he's a CEO and he needs to be held responsible for the performance. And this is their own metrics, not up to my standards, up to Xbox's standards. And again, Phil is Xbox, so we're in this weird fucking cyclone of like pointing fingers, but like, it's Phil. It's gotta be Phil. And also Matt Booty. I have been on the record for a long time not a fan of Matt Booty. I don't think he handles Xbox Studios well at all. He's asleep at the wheel, from my point of view, and has been for years. I don't know why the fuck he's still around. So even if this was Phil's decision and not Matt Booty's decision, the fact that he's just been chiming in on Twitter is just making me fucking angry, where I'm like, get this guy off my timeline. I don't want to fucking see him. I don't know. That's my point of view. I think we need a shakeup at Xbox. I do. The next people may be worse. Sure. They may be better. Like, I don't know, but I think something's got to be done. There's got to be a shakeup. Leave it to the floor.
Damn.
Are you ready for this? Because
I want Dan to go next because I feel like it's like.
Sure, yeah. I was waiting.
Have Ro come in as the voice of reason after. Yeah.
No, I feel like I'm on Gage's.
Yeah, I'm not on anyone's side. I just want to clarify that from the get-go
True.
here.
These are all opinions.
Yes, exactly. We all have different perspectives, so I just want to preface with that. What I will say personally is I think it's easy, and this isn't to disparage your side of it, Gage, just to clarify that. I think it's easy for people to point to Phil and say, man, this is all Phil's fault. Phil's fucking everything up. But as we were just talking about, Microsoft is a $3 trillion company. Like, they are demanding profit margins of Xbox of an exorbitant amount, which they cannot possibly achieve, which have been exasperated by the Activision Blizzard acquisition because they are now demanding even more profits, and they pulled Activision Blizzard in thinking, oh, we're going to make a whole bunch of money with Call of Duty and all of that, but now we're also demanding more from the rest of the business because they made that massive investment in Activision Blizzard. And when I say they, I mean, you know, Satya Nadella or whoever's at the top of Microsoft. You know, there's rumors that Bill Gates is still somehow involved with Microsoft, which I don't know how that works. But anyways, I think sometimes we don't necessarily look at the human aspect of this, because I personally don't believe that Phil wants to shut down, you know, Tango Gameworks. I don't think Phil wants to shut down Arcane Austin. I think personally that he was being pressured to make a decision to cut costs by X amount of money, or else your job is done, or I don't know, something, there's some repercussion for that. So I don't necessarily think that Phil has done the best job as of late. I think that he's made mistakes, as Gage has said as well. I don't think that Matt Booty is a very good fucking first party manager, or whatever the fuck he wants to be called. I think he's awful. I agree with Gage on that 100%. And that would be one criticism that I would have of Phil, because that's something that he reports directly to Phil. So I definitely agree with that aspect. I just think from everything that I've ever read about Phil and, you know, interactions I've had with Phil, Phil genuinely cares about Xbox. He wants Xbox to succeed. He wants the developers to succeed from my perspective anyways. I don't see these things that are happening as coming from Phil's, you know, direct mouth, so to speak, is my perspective. And just to touch on it a little bit, Gage, because you talked about, well, you know, Phil was doing really good for a while, turning the company around. I agree with that. However, like, I do feel like at that time, Xbox was a much leaner company. Like, we had 343, Turn 10, the Coalition, and Mohang, and that was all the studios. 4 studios that were for all of Microsoft game studios. I think that's why Phil had the luxury to go back and say, how can I fix all of this stuff? Because we're not really that expensive of an operation right now for Microsoft, because we don't have a fucking first party, basically. Like, they had 4 studios.
Right.
So I think it was easier for him to do that at that time, because, you know, Satya is not going to go to him and be like, man, you're really killing us here with these 4 studios that you're paying for. Like, that operation was just significantly leaner at that time. And now, you know, it's ballooned to what it is now.
But I think the only problem I have with that line of thinking is that Phil is the guy who ballooned it. So so that's the problem that we run into, is that you're absolutely right. Like, it was a leaner company and it was easier to manage, but it was his decision to then try to incorporate all these other companies. Fair. And now, if he can't handle that, again, like, I understand the human aspect. Again, my worries of the human aspect more goes towards the thousands of developers. I'm less worried about Phil currently.
No, I'm not.
But no, I know. I'm just saying, like, when it comes to thinking of the human element, Phil's not at the top of my priority list. But
I wasn't meaning it in terms of empathy towards Phil's.
Right.
That's the way I was phrasing it. I didn't mean it that way. I was just meaning in terms of, like, Phil makes these decisions as a human being. He's, in my opinion, he's not making these decisions as, you know, corporate overlord Phil Spencer.
No, but he has. But
hold on, I think we're both projecting different things. If we're calling, we have no idea how he's basing these decisions on. He's a businessman. He's a CEO. Like
That's true.
he's approaching these decisions as someone who's like trying to make a business turn a profit and be in a healthier state against its competitions. I'm sure he's a great person, but like we can't project like the human element on that front entirely.
We can't project.
I mean,
we can't project negativity or positivity onto him because we just don't know.
Either.
Right, and that's fair. I would agree with that.
For me, like when I look at Phil specifically, I think about the Jim Ryan incident that happened just a few months ago, where, like, because of PlayStation's doubling down on live service and their buying up of studios to support live service games, they had to turn around and shut down studios that they had in London, specifically like London studio. And we saw a terrible picture of Jim Ryan visiting that studio, and then like a day later or that same week, shutting that studio down. And when I see that as a fundamental failure of when I point the blame at it as like, well, that's Jim Ryan's PlayStation. If the studios are closing under him, that is like the fault of all the things leading up, all the decisions made by this man that led us up to this moment. So when I look at like Phil Spencer's Xbox, I personally, we'll get into the second part. I like Game Pass. I don't think it's been the positive like effect on the company that we wish it is. And then when I see like studio closures like at this caliber, it's like, okay, well, these are miscalculations that have happened over time. Like you bought Bethesda first, great, and then you doubled down and spent nearly $70 billion on Activision. Like, yeah, if that's going to move the needle in terms of like the executives and the shareholders expecting more, that is a miscalculation from the head of Xbox Game Studios. It's on them.
And I think it's important to remember too that when they had acquired Bethesda, that was at the time the most expensive acquisition in the video games industry. And then they did another one that was worth 10 times as much. These are decisions that were made by Phil. And like this is what it gets to, is that it's not so much me wanting to like, I want to punish Phil, fuck Phil. It's just like, well, no, these are the decisions that Phil made, and now Xbox is in a bind. So therefore, instead of laying off all of these studios, maybe I'm not getting that across well, but it's like, it's not that I want Phil gone. It's more so that I'm looking at the pipeline of operations, and it's like, okay, well, who do we hold responsible for this flounder that we found ourselves in? Well, it's the guy who decided to buy all these fucking studios.
I agree that those decisions were made by Phil, but I would just say that personally, I think those decisions were made because he had pressure to make Xbox into a 20 times, profit driver. I don't think that, Satya Nadella is sitting back like, yeah, Phil, you're making us like 1%. Nah, keep going, keep doing it. Like that's what I'm saying. Like I don't think that it's driven by Phil specifically, because he was basically saying, I need to fucking do something to get people interested and try to get, our services and software and all this stuff up. How do I do that? Maybe buy a bunch of studios and hope to God that they make some awesome games, and it'll drive people to our platform to produce the fucking amount of profit, that the CEO of Microsoft, Satya, is asking for and the shareholders are asking for. I fundamentally don't agree that Phil is the 100% factor here, and that's what concerns me, because I know how much Phil cares, or at least in my opinion, I think Phil cares about this industry and Xbox, that if he is not in that position, who is going to be in that position? And that concerns me, because if it's someone worse than Phil in terms of business practices, then we're getting a worse Xbox. We're not getting a better Xbox.
Hey, hold on. Yeah. Okay, I agree with you. With the like, of course, it's not 100% Phil. Fundamentally, of course not. These things are so fucking complicated. Who knows, like how many people this goes through, et cetera, and like with all the pressure. Like I can't imagine that. I struggle with that line of thinking, like it could be worse because it's already bad now. I want to bring up something that Christian said,
Well, you mentioned this is Jim Ryan's PlayStation and all the live service elements he had. Like we could get someone worse, but what happened when Jim Ryan announced that he was leaving? He wasn't even at the door yet, and somebody at Sony they had canceled all those live service games, right? So it's like, sure, it could go worse, or somebody could with. It's tough. I think Phil Spencer he's such an interesting character in that his whether it's intentional or not, his love of games, I think it murkies the water. I think it murkies the water because Christian's right. At the end of the day, he's a businessman, and that is his job. And we're now discussing his performance, and that's really what it comes down to. What is his performance like? Like, you could really like the guy that shows up, late every day to work, and yeah, he's a nice guy. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, well, you're showing up late to work. We got to figure out something that's going on here. I'm interested to see if Ro has any.
Yeah.
If Ro has any opinions on this.
My apologies for interrupting, Ro.
No, it's okay. What I was gonna say was Phil's decision to buy the studios to help bolster Xbox aren't even given the chance to do what he bought them for.
Yep.
It's like he already shut. Like, when are they going to do that? You didn't even give them the opportunity to get you your money back in the first place. They released Redfall because you asked them to, and they made Hi-Fi Rush because they believed in it. And neither of those apparently worked in their favor, or maybe they did. And you just decided to shut them down for what seems like no reason to me. And if it's not Phil's decision, why are we paying Phil to do nothing? Is he just the middleman? Is he just the messenger for the CEOs who make all these decisions? What does he do? If he does do something, then he needs to do it better. If he doesn't do something, he needs to not be paid for doing nothing. Because we were saying with that breakdown, it seems like that money can be going somewhere else. I know it's not going to, because you got to pay Phil, you got to pay the higher ups, but it doesn't make sense why it's going to people who are making bad decisions, and it's going to continue to. I know there's no real solution to all of this. It's just us voicing our concerns and distaste for capitalism and all that shit, but it generally doesn't make sense because they're making it the problem of everyone else when it's not everyone else's problem. We're making the shit that you asked us to, and sometimes when we're not making the shit that you asked us to, and it's good shit, we're still getting punished for it, and it doesn't make sense. And we're not. And I don't want to support Xbox if me supporting Xbox doesn't support Xbox. It doesn't make sense. Like, I'm paying for Game Pass for what?
Yeah.
And if I outright buy Hi-Fi Rush, it still didn't help. There's people on Steam buying Hi-Fi Rush outright. Didn't help keep that studio alive either. So it's weird.
Should we?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to move on to the stuff from today to add that into discussion. But if you have a response to that, please.
I was going to say, like Christian said earlier, and it's funny, when you first said it, I initially disagreed and pushed back when you're talking about, if Tango wasn't included, it would have been more digestible. But you're right that the Tango throws such a curveball because it's in direct contrast to what Phil himself said. And like Ro just said, it doesn't matter if you make a success. Like, this is what I'm saying. From Xbox's own metrics, they said that Hi-Fi Rush was successful in every single way that they could measure it. And that's coming from Xbox. So how does it make sense that you then turn around and axe that company? And one of the things that actually gave me that earned kudos from me was a couple years ago, I think it was maybe 2022, there was a big wave of tech layoffs. I don't know if you guys remember, but in the tech industry, they kind of got hit with what the game industry is getting hit now. And Tim Cook, in lieu of laying off people from Apple, took a huge pay cut to his salary. And that was the first time that there was a story from Apple in the news where I was like, oh, hey, kudos to you. That's kind of, wow, not a piece of shit. Wow. And
extremely rich still, but wow.
Exactly. You're just a little bit less extremely rich. And the fact that it happened once, and this is the problem, and businesses in Japan do this all the time. Like I said, there's different cultures around the world. Not everything is as greedy and as fucked as it is here in the West. So between Japan and this recent story from Apple, it's like the fact that that option is on the table every time that doesn't happen it is a deliberate decision from a CEO to go, you know what? I'm not looking at my paycheck at all. I think I'm gonna have to cut all these jobs. Sorry. Like, and that's one of those things where it's like that's the tricky business with trying to like certain CEOs, is that a CEO is like it's a different breed of person. Like there is a lot of pressure that comes with the job, and I'm sure it's not an easy job, but like you are paid accordingly to that. And sorry, go ahead.
No, I just want to jump in real quick because I definitely agree with what you're saying there, but do we know for a fact that that hasn't happened? Because I agree, it often comes out in the media, but like if someone...
There's no way it doesn't, right?
I don't know. That's the thing. I don't know. I'm not going to assume that he did take a pay cut. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying, like, what if he did and he didn't say anything? Like,
Should definitely say something.
See, but this is the problem.
Or anything. Has he said anything? Has he made a statement?
But this is the problem, is that we're like, it's we have to talk about the news as we get it. Like, we can't start
Right.
coming up with like hypothetical scenarios of like, well, but this is also the problem with like saying like, well, maybe it wasn't Phil, maybe it came above him, and it's like, well, then that just alleviates all cause for criticism. Like, that's just kind of like a hypothetical. And at the same time, it's like it's no better to say like, oh, Phil was sitting there and he has a dartboard with you know Tango's logo on it, and he's fucking like throwing, like, you can't sort of like fill in the gaps either way. In like in our own headcanons, we have to talk about just the things that are happening. And like I do personally believe, just based on how media works, that if he did take a pay cut, that would come out one way or another, whether it be from him wanting to say that or from somebody in Xbox's in the C-suite that likes Phil and that, like, you know, is inspired to work for him. Somebody would leak it. It would absolutely come out. I that's just my own personal belief. So every time that something like this happens and we don't get a story like that, it's like I can't help but feel like you're not really taking all avenues that you could to avoid this.
I hear you, but I agree with you, but are you not taking the same stance by assuming that he didn't take one, like take a pay cut? Because like it's the same thing on either side, you know? Like, to assume he did take a pay cut or assume he didn't, like, I feel like we shouldn't be assuming either. Like that shouldn't even be part of the conversation because we don't know. Like, if there's a report out there that says one or the other.
That's what I'm saying, is that I feel like they're usually like, that's every time CEOs from any company get a raise, like with Bobby Kotick and all that stuff, it does come out. Like, maybe not into our gaming space, but there are analysts out there that look at all these things. Like, it does, when CEOs get pay raises, it's all from the board. Like, it's all public knowledge. So I feel like it does make its way out, doesn't it? Like, I remember seeing spreadsheets for Bobby Kotick of like people talking about, this was his salary this year, this was his salary this year, this was his salary this year. So I feel like that knowledge is like, if I were to like spend 5 minutes on Google right now, I'm sure I could probably find it for Phil. And therefore, if he did take a pay cut, I feel like it would make its way to public knowledge.
This quickly though, because it just happened. Like, all this is all fresh. I don't know that
That's true. That's true. I mean, it could be, but I mean, I'm gonna until I see evidence that he did, I'm gonna operate on the assumption that he didn't, because that's a business change that you would see reported. That's what I'm saying. I know what you're trying to say, and I don't think it's the same thing. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I just don't think that's.
Semantics aside, I still think the weirdest thing about this is that it's been essentially 2 business days now, but then there's no direct word from like official word. Like all the reports are like, these were like held internally through like meetings, and we're getting like third party reports from like Bloomberg, Kotaku. Like, there's no like direct word from like the company or someone like high up themselves, which I think would have gone a long way for optics in that sense. Like, it's great when they talk about like the good stuff they want to do in gaming, but when they do the bad stuff, like something they like don't want to show their face, which I think sucks. Where's it going with this? Oh, sorry. We've talked a lot about Phil and upper management, but I still think the worst thing about this one, I was hearing someone read. I was listening to the Kind of Funny Games cast, and they were talking about, like, they were reading from somewhere. They're like, the people affected will, of course, they're going to be resorted to like local labor laws, which, you know, that just means like for the Americans, the American studios, Arcane Austin. you just don't have healthcare anymore, but everyone else working outside of that is like most countries are better than us. Daniel, talking just to you, that they'll have some kind of package or like timeline where they get to like get offloaded and then have like support. And it just sucks for all the developers out there who are like having to deal with like figuring out fucking healthcare and shit. But there is a second bomb coming we haven't even touched on. I'll just mention this. I don't even know if have enough time to even talk about this, but I do want to mention that unfortunate news that Perfect Dark development is currently in trouble, which sucks because that game has been in development for a long time. But where I want to highlight is today news broke out from Bloomberg again that Xbox is planning more cuts after studio closings. I'm going to read a little bit from the Bloomberg article, which talks about the Matt Booty stuff as well. Where should we here? Hold on. Here we go. This week, Xbox began offering voluntary severance agreements to producers, quality assurance testers, and other staff at ZeniMax, which it purchased in 2020 for $7.5 billion, according to people familiar with the company's plans. Others across the Xbox organization have been told that more cuts are on the way. A spokesperson for Xbox declined to comment. Employees were shocked by the unexpected shuttering Tuesday of 3 Xbox subsidiaries and the absorption of a 4th. The closures included Tokyo. Sorry, we've already covered this. We'll skip over this part for a second. During a town hall with ZeniMax staff on Wednesday morning, Xbox president Matt Booty praised Hi-Fi Rush, but did not specify why the company had shut down the development studio behind it, according to 3 people who were in attendance. And I'll throw this in for a second. This is what Ro wanted to mention. This is what Matt Booty had to say. We need smaller games that give us prestige and awards, Matt Booty, head of Xbox Game Studios, told employees in a town hall today. We'll bring Game Pass here in a second, but we have to mention that in. Speaking about the closures more broadly, Booty said that the company's studios had been spread too thin, like peanut butter on bread, and that leaders across the division had felt understaffed. They decided to close these studios to free up resources elsewhere, he said. We'll stop there.
How did that happen?
Sorry, he says he wants smaller games that win prestigious awards, and so we're closing down Tango Gameworks.
What did he say?
And
what is
Game
happening?
Pass, and then Game Pass's the prices are going up as well.
What did you say about the managers being spread thin? Was that a thing?
No, yes. No, the games.
Sorry?
Booty said that the company studios had been spread too thin, like peanut butter on bread, and that leaders across the division had felt understaffed. They decided to close the studio to free up resources elsewhere.
Isn't that something that you like try to make sure you have under wraps before you buy the studio, so you don't get spread thin? I don't know. I'm asking. Like, so this prepare first?
I mean, this comes back to my issues with Phil Spencer, is that if you're now deciding that you have too many studios that are spread too thin, do you know what helps with not having that happen is not acquiring more studios.
Consolidation bad.
I don't know. I think my frustration with Xbox is that it seems incomprehensible. Like, at least with Jim Ryan, there was like an established logic that he was following. It was flawed, and we all knew that he had a huge fucking hard-on for live service games. But it's like the decisions he was making all led to that point where it's like, okay, wow, you're closing down a lot of these single player studios, and you're diverting all your resources into live service elements. You're opening up online studios. Like, okay, I don't like any of these decisions, but they're all funneling towards something, which is live service. I don't know what the hell's going on at Xbox anymore. Like, what is the plan? What is the game plan here?
Oh, I should have read the follow-up paragraph after that, so that I can read something else after. Right after that Booty thing. Jill Braff, head of ZeniMax Studios, said in the town hall that she hoped the reorganization would allow the division, which also develops Fallout and Doom, to put more focus on fewer projects. It's hard to support 9 studios all across the world with a lean central team with an ever-growing plate of things to do, she said, according to audio of the meeting reviewed by Bloomberg. The quote tweet from Ethan Gatch said, Microsoft spent 5 years buying up studios only to turn around and decide it doesn't have the bandwidth to run them all, to which Imran Khan quote tweeted and said, what a wild answer. They spent years telling us their acquisitions were specifically because they could afford the time, money, and security to operate all these studios. Instead, when push came to slightly more push, they cut out as fast as possible, which is the for me, that is the most frustrating of it all.
Yeah. And they're planning more cuts. Was that correct?
Yeah.
As well. So even
More's
if
coming.
even if Phil did take a pay cut, and he did do that, and he did close down Tango Studios, and he did close down Arcane, it's still not enough potentially, and they still have to cut more people and more staff. Even if he did do that, I just wanted to say that
It's looking like it. Yeah.
So I don't know if he has done that, but if he has done it, it's still not enough, which is crazy that the option that this even happened in the first place is my crazy. And oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I brought in Game Pass as like the Game Pass is not sustainable is a claim that I'm kind of staking in, because I do agree, like it has been beneficial to like discoverability. When you have this many studios, I don't know how sustainable it is. I threw in like a tweet at the very end that was like, PlayStation Plus and Game Pass are not growing at all. 1% growth in the last year for both of them, which is terrible. I mean, obviously you hit a ceiling eventually. There's only so many people who have these consoles, and like, what do you use to make these subscriptions worth it? And the way I think about it is conditioning. People have been throwing around the word Game Pass effect, which I think might be real. I'm going to give you an analogy. In 2020, of course, because of COVID, a lot of studios in the movie industry had to shift because you can't play movies in theaters anymore. Specifically, Disney leveraged Pixar through COVID and after COVID. They would start dumping all of their Pixar stuff directly onto Disney Plus. When restrictions lifted and it was time to go back to theaters, they of course they kept dumping Pixar on Disney Plus. Now that they're going back into theaters, those movies aren't doing well because over the past 4 years, you spent time conditioning people that Pixar is to be watched at home for free with a subscription that they're trying to make worthwhile. There are plenty of times when I see like smaller games come out, and when I see people be like, "Oh, it's not coming to Game Pass," I'll just wait for it to come to Game Pass. And I think that's bad in the long run. But also, games take a lot of time to make, and they take a lot of money to make. And when you don't have growth, suddenly you're like at this like kind of impasse where it's like, well, damn, like you're not bringing in enough revenue to cover the costs of making those games, which sucks. Because like Hellblade can do well, Hi-Fi Rush can do well according to the metrics, and of course they'll still get canned because like in the long run, Game Pass in general is not sustainable. It's like, what is the answer? The onus is on us to buy the games? Maybe. I don't know.
That's an interesting point you bring up. Yeah.
Is it up to us to sustain Microsoft?
Oh well, no, of course not.
Okay.
No, that's.
I'm just like,
I lost a tweet somewhere.
Isn't there not growth at Microsoft? Is it just not enough growth for I don't know, for them to be happy?
Microsoft at large, sure, growth. Microsoft Gaming, a subsidiary of Microsoft, I don't know.
Okay.
I would assume yes, maybe. Like if like their value of all their assets is trending up, maybe. But if you want the parent company to do well, you have to like cut costs. And
It's interesting. I'm wondering, like what you just said there is a really interesting idea. A thought to sort of ponder is that does Game Pass existing, does it create an almost sort of like,
can I jump in real quick? Because
I like the service. Please, yeah, please do.
I feel like maybe we're pigeonholing down the wrong chute though, because I feel like there's been reports of indie studios saying Game Pass was a huge success for them. Like I feel like, at least from what I understand, I thought that Game Pass was very successful for independent developers and maybe problematic for, AAA games because of their budget and all of the other issues that come along with that. Because now, I mean, Sony has their service as well, which is essentially similar to Game Pass, where they're just putting all those indie titles and, double A.
Indies, but is it helping Xbox?
Here's my question: is that because Game Pass is probably the number one expense at Xbox, And I think like that might not be true, but I feel like that's not a crazy thing to throw out as a condition for a conversation that a Game Pass might be the most expensive bill at Xbox right now currently. Does it alter the metrics of how they deem, like, I wonder if all the Xbox studios now have a higher bar that they need to reach because Xbox is spending so much money on Game Pass. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're not just footing the bill of these studios where it's like, okay, you put in these amount of resources for 3, 4, 5 years, the game releases, then you get your money back. It's still a very risky business to be in, but at least there's a flow to it where it's like, okay, you invest for 3, 4, 5 years, game comes out, get your money back. But now because there's Game Pass as well, is that not shifting the metrics of success for a lot of these studios that aren't indie studios, that are like Xbox studios, I wonder?
That's what I thought.
It's like, it's it's no longer are you making enough money to justify your studio? Are you making enough money for Xbox? And by the way, we have this really big expense that you have no say about. It's called Game Pass, and we need enough money from all of our studios to cover Game Pass, no longer to just cover the studios, if you know what I mean.
I wish I knew what like metrics they use for success.
Right.
Because I don't think it matters like how many people played the game if the service it's on isn't growing, because
Right.
that is where the end all be all is for like growth at the end of the day. Doesn't matter that like, 100 million people could play Hi-Fi Rush, but like if the service isn't growing, you're only getting a finite number year over year.
Right. And if Hi-Fi Rush is $39.99 and 100 million people play it, and they, they're subscribed to Game Pass, which is what, $15? Like, that's where I'm wondering how like the money shakes out on this. I don't know. But it's interesting that you posed that question, Christian, because I didn't. But when this news broke, I really genuinely considered canceling my Xbox subscription for like the first time in years. I was like, I don't know. It's rubbing me the wrong way, and I have started to wonder myself if Game Pass. I know it does good, but similar to like what we were talking about with review bombing, right? Where it's like it's kind of a tool, and there's nuance to whether or not it's good or bad. Like I know PlateUp is an example. I brought it up earlier. PlateUp is a game that I would not have tried. He doesn't watch the show, so I shouldn't be shouting him out. But Sheldon is the one who turned me on to PlateUp. He's like, "Oh, I found this game on Game Pass. You should download it." And that's happened numerous times with numerous games. So like, Game Pass for sure can help out indies. Watch the show, Sheldon. I know.
This is the tweet I forgot to throw in with the Game Pass thing, and this I'm pulling from Charlie Intel, which is funny that he's like, weirdly enough, he's like been really talking about like all this shit too. But this comes from The Verge. Charlie Intel screenshotting The Verge, reporting that Xbox executives have been debating for months whether or not to put Call of Duty on Xbox Game Pass because of how much revenue will be lost. Like, for me, that is signposting that like that is a service that like will lose money over time. Like it is not worth having. I don't know. It is not worth putting the games on there from the studios that you acquired, because and at the end of the day, it's a money loss or a money pit.
Unless
But you've spent like years conditioning people to like revolve around an ecosystem around this thing, which puts Microsoft in such a really fucking tricky spot. Because like, how do you move away from that if that is the answer?
I feel like Phil is such a victim of himself, because to what Dan said earlier, when Xbox was a leaner company, I feel like Game Pass made sense then, right? When you only have 5 or 6 studios, you can come out and you can say, yeah, all of our first party Xbox games can come to Game Pass, and that's the benefit you get as somebody who's in this ecosystem, who owns Xbox hardware. This is the benefit you get. But the problem is, and this is why I say it comes down to Phil. And again, it's not whether or not Phil's doing it maliciously. It has nothing to do with the fact. He could have all the right intentions in his heart. It doesn't matter, because this is still the consequences of his decisions. Is that you have a lean company like Xbox, you come out with Game Pass saying all of our games are coming to this, and it's like, cool, this works. And what they're doing for indies is huge. Like, you can't argue that. Like, it does help indies a lot. But then the problem is you go out and you spend billions of dollars acquiring all these companies that are now first-party Xbox studios, and you already said that all your first-party games are coming to Game Pass. Like, it seems like it's a domino effect of like, well, okay, now does the money make sense that you have like, and I've said this before on the show, I think, where it's like, in my mind, what they would do with Call of Duty is have the second most recent game on Game Pass for free, and then the most recent one you have to pay for. But they've already locked themselves into this whole Game Pass, like first party games come to Game Pass. And it's like, this can't be profitable. It can't be. Like, I wasn't one of these people that was down on Xbox Game Pass when it was first announced. People were like hating on it from the get-go, saying this is a money well and this is not going to work. Like, I think there was a time and place where it probably did work. Obviously, when you start a subscription service, no matter what the subscription service is, the first few years are always at a loss. But I mean, like, it probably could have got there eventually. But now with this amount of like studios there that you are now beholden to add to Game Pass, like, I don't know that the money does work actually anymore. Like, it seems crazy to me. I don't know.
I don't want to glaze Nintendo too much because they've made some pretty trash decisions in the past. But can you imagine if like Metroid Prime 4 was under Microsoft, or like games that have been like chugging along, things aren't looking super hot, but they believe in the studio that's making the game, so they're going to let them cook. I have a feeling like if Metroid Prime 4 was like not under Nintendo, it would have been canned, that studio would have been shut down. Like, it's insane to think about that because Perfect Dark is, I think, in a similar situation right now. But aside from that, there was a tweet that I saw from John Cartwright tweeting somebody else. And he said, you ever think about how Kirby never grew? Just kept plodding along, being a little guy. Kept an entire company alive and thriving for like 3 decades just by being profitable. Finally, had the game exceed the original with Forgotten Land, which was the last one, reaching 7 million units sold. And the most profitable Kirby was the first one before that one. And in between all of that, they're selling 2 million, 1 million, going up and down, fluctuating and shit like that. But Nintendo's like, all right, you guys just keep cooking. And like, Kirby's popular, but it's not like, it is really popular, but it's not like Mario popular, Zelda popular, and all that kind of stuff. Right. But people love Kirby. But it doesn't matter if people love Kirby if it was if it was Microsoft, if it was PlayStation, in my opinion. I think that speaks a lot of what companies can do when they believe in their studios. Right. Eventually it'll come back around. I don't know. It's
Go ahead, Daniel, sorry.
I would say that there are those examples though also, because I mean Halo Infinite is a great example. That game took 6 years to make. That is one of their biggest IPs, and every other Halo game had a 3-year dev cycle. So literally double the amount of time. And you know, obviously it still wasn't enough when it came out. They obviously forced that game out too quickly. But like I feel like that's a decent example. There's also the example of Starfield, which that game obviously predates the Microsoft acquisition, but they also let that game cook, you know, multiple years after it was supposed to be out as well, even after they acquired them. I definitely hear you on the Metroid front, because that game's been forever. We still haven't seen that game again, though. Yeah, I don't know if we're ever going to see it.
God.
I think Schreier deleted a reply to his own tweet, which is weird, but
did he block you?
No, it's still there. I think he just deleted it because people were misinterpreting it, but I wanted to pull it in. It was basically what Ro was saying. Anyway, sorry. Somewhere amidst all these reports everywhere, I'm gonna try not to butcher this. The gist of it was that how did I forget to mention this? Arcane Austin, of course, was pitching a single-player game. They were really excited about getting back to their roots. They were denied. And Tango Gameworks was pitching Hi-Fi Rush 2, a successor to, of course, the critically acclaimed Hi-Fi Rush. And they were denied because it would take too long to make. I found that so contradictory because, okay, the game did take 6 years long to make, I think, but whatever. When we're looking at like Bethesda timelines for the next Elder Scrolls, which has been doing for a long time, when Starfield gets 10 years, and when the next the next Fallout is like even longer away. They have infinite timelines, and yeah, of course, the answer to that is like, well, it's established IP. The thing is, and this goes back to a quote I read from one of these articles, is that Tango wasn't given the chance to become established IP.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And like Dan, you're mentioning like Halo Infinite, which like again, you and I agree a lot on Halo Infinite in terms of like, yeah, the core gameplay is absolutely fire and it's great, but like I would still argue that it was not a flawless launch. Starfield, I would argue not a flawless launch. Like we're just now getting city maps, which is like that's just a feature that they just didn't do. Like there's no way that the current maps in the game is like that was a design choice that somebody was really passionate about. Like these games are still kind of launching in rocky states, and you're right, like Starfield was before Phil, but the one thing that did happen under Phil was the creation of the initiative, which has been a fucking train wreck. Has been an absolute shit show. So like there's things you can point to that Phil has done right, and I will always cheer Phil on for. But what I'm saying is like it seems like there's a line in the sand where, again, I don't know if it's complacency, if it's kind of just getting comfortable in your job. Everybody does it. Like sometimes you just you take your foot off the pedal, but like things are not. This does not seem like the Phil that we had when he first took charge of the ship. And like the initiative is a great example. Like that was supposed to be a new marquee Xbox studio, right? That was supposed to be their Naughty Dog. That's what the whole quadruple A thing, right? That was all them. And this, not only are they not really even making the game anymore, but the game is still not even in good shape apparently, which sucks, which really hurts because I was looking forward to that, as I think you were too, Dan. I mean, we both love Perfect Dark.
I'm really glad you mentioned the initiative because I was literally gonna say that also at the end, or like when I got a second, and that very much disappoints me to hear that report about Perfect Dark. I fucking hate that. And me and Ro were watching the fucking was it the Game Awards? Yeah, when they announced it, and I fucking flipped out. So yeah, that's super disappointing, and that's a studio that maybe you could have shut down because fuck. The last reports we heard from that studio, there's like 60 people left there, and like it's constant in and out. No one's sticking around.
Revolving door,
yeah, that's a studio you probably should have shut down instead of Tango.
So, but that's the thing. Like that was Phil's choice to make, right? Like that's
absolutely, yeah.
Why did he not shut down that in the initiative and instead
absolutely.
Tango? Like what the fuck?
Absolutely, I agree with
you.
And
that's the thing. When we say shut down, like, oh, get rid of the initiative, it's like even in that sense, I would be like, well, no, just float those people back to the studios that they came from, or like move them around, divest them into your catalog of studios. But yeah, the fact that the initiative is still trucking along, and you're gonna get rid of Tango, that doesn't make any sense to me. And even Arcane Austin, like. It's, like I said earlier, it stung a little bit when you were saying like, oh, it would have been digestible if it was just them. It's like everybody's getting hung up on Redfall. Redfall was bad, absolutely, but they did not want to make it. They made Prey, which was a fucking fantastic game. So Arcane Austin also has a lot of talent. If it was the reverse, where Redfall came out, so many years ago and it was shit, and Prey was their most recent game, people would be up in arms about Arcane Austin as well. So there's kind of a bit of a recency bias there. Them shutting down Arcane Austin is also fucking stupid beyond belief. Yeah, I don't know. Lots of silly decisions being made over there, and that's again. I don't want Phil to go, but at the same time, it's like somebody's making the decisions, and I question them.
I had something to say, and now I don't remember.
You're probably gonna moan or something sexy like that.
No. It was something real, but it was a nice little like buffer or segue to get us into the outro. So instead, here's the outro.
Wait.
Okay, please.
I think the one thing all of us agree on is absolutely feel terrible for all these developers that lost their jobs. So that's hopefully they get back on their feet quick and get into a company that's not gonna, get rid of them. But,
good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck. And I'm gonna shout out I can't believe I'm going to shout out a company for previous layoffs. But I'm going to shout out Riot Games, who when we talked about their layoff packages were extremely generous, and it fucking pisses me off that a $3 trillion company is giving these people that are leaving way less than what Riot Games was able to give to those people.
It's the exact problem. Yeah.
Yep. There's no excuse for it. There's no way you can't give these people way more severance and more resources. Like what was it at Riot Games? They're giving anybody who asked for one like a juiced up supercomputer in case they wanted to go off into like indie developers. They did so much for them, and there's no excuse that a $3 trillion company can't do the same. So, shout out to Riot Games, I guess, for being the lesser evil.
For not firing them as badly as they.
Yeah, exactly. For not laying them off harder.
Yeah. Oh my god.
And shout out to everyone joining us live on YouTube and Twitch, as well as podcast services everywhere, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, fuck Google Podcasts. Am I right, fellas?
Yeah. Goodbye.
RIP, Spotify, and everywhere else you get your podcasts. Thank you, Roshan. Thank you, myself. Thank you, Gage. That's Daniel. This has been Podcast PXN. We are out of here.
Much love and quit firing people.
See ya.
Stop. Just stop.